Great, thank you. My name is Jerry Jorgensen. I'm a solution engineer with Oracle. I support healthcare payers and providers across the country, specializing in our enterprise performance management group of capabilities. So that includes everything from budgeting, forecasting, costing, financial close, as well as reporting. I've been with Oracle for about 10 years now in this role and talked to several different health payers across the country through different topics from profitability to budgeting, forecasting. Prior to this role at Oracle, I spent a couple of years implementing the solutions, and before that, I actually spent 10 years in a variety of financial roles that span everything from financial analyst to division manager to reporting team manager, all within the insurance industry. So today I'm going to be talking to you about profitability and cost management in terms of the EPM capability from Oracle. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So in this session, I really wanted to talk and really get into some of the nuances around what we refer to as profitability and cost management in terms of costing and allocations. Really what this is a business process or component of the Oracle Cloud platform. And for those who may or may not have seen this before, it really covers all of the different activities done within the Office of Finance. So when you look at kind of the comprehensive span of the Oracle Cloud platform, you see everything from the standpoint of planning, close, reporting, enterprise data management, and then also embedded within that are capabilities around profitability and cost management, or costing, as we also refer to it as. So when we think about allocations, it really comes in a lot of different shapes and sizes. Everything from terms of looking at things, whether it's a shared service allocation, maybe it's looking at allocations by product or by segment, right? Breaking costs down also in terms of IT costing. A lot of organizations are moving their IT organization to be run a little bit more like a business. So being able to cost down to the different activities that an IT organization may produce, as well as transfer pricing allocations. Again, being able to accurately come up with the costs associated with transfer pricing. And then also, which is very relevant to today's conversation, is around quality cost allocations and specifically MLR reporting. And that's one of the areas that organizations in the health insurance space have really been drawn to, being able to have a more robust solution to be able to allocate quality-related expenses to more accurately be able to report on their medical loss ratio, as well as be able to defend those from an auditability standpoint. So really what we're trying to achieve, and one of the key outcomes of profitability and cost management, is really delivering what we like to refer to as a performance ledger. So if you think in terms of a general ledger where you're booking general accounting activities or sub-ledgers or things of those nature, performance ledger is really focused in on the things around being able to understand profitability and margin at a more granular level. So looking at things at the plan level, the product level, the segment, even by client or market, or even sales process, depending on the level of granularity. So I've personally worked with several different payers throughout the country. One in particular, a larger one on the East Coast, actually used their general ledger to perform, try to perform some of these allocations, and it really ended up, creating 3 different allocation ledgers that were very complex and really weighted down the general ledger to the point where it hampered the close process. It was difficult to reconcile and difficult to maintain. The idea of the performance ledger is to move that level of detail out of the general ledger, right, where, or again, the general ledger is really built and designed to be there for accounting activities and those things to close the book's not, what we like to call performance reporting. That's where the performance ledger comes in, and really being able to look and understand profitability and margin at the level of detail in a different place where you're not bogging things down, that's purpose-built as well. And really kind of some of the key attributes that are really important from the standpoint of getting to this notion of a performance ledger and modern profitability and cost management comes down to different capabilities. So capabilities, for example, things around profitability and intelligence. So built-in dashboards and analytics to be able to uncover and understand where, what products or what segments or what markets may be detracting from revenue. Built-in allocation capabilities, right? So having a solution around point-and-click interface that allows you to, not have to write rules, not have to do any sort of coding, but instead simply have a business user click and basically walk through a wizard to develop complex multi-tier allocation rules. The next thing that's important really is around rule transparency. So it's important that this, when you're looking at allocations, you kind of demystify things from that black box syndrome. You want to be able to easily defend them and be sure that, hey, what the costs that a certain segment or a product are receiving are accurate and are defendable. And that gets down to something we call traceability within the EPM platform. So being able to trace a cost back down, from a granular level all the way to its origin to say, hey, is this cost, coming, from the correct place, and being able to have a meaningful conversation around, really the profitability versus whether or not the allocation is actually correct or not. That's really what drives rule transparency and its importance. Again, another key capability is around scenario analysis. The EPM platform has really made it a lot easier to develop multiple scenarios where, if I wanted to say change a cost, allocation methodology and understand, hey, is it going to be more accurate or give me better results? I can simply use scenario capabilities to make a copy of my cost model and then be able to quickly and easily understand what that impact would look like. So when you look at now, the costing model in itself and being able to drive things and understand things at a detail level, you really need to have that ease of use, that simple point and click type of interface to be able to build and manage the system. And that's kind of what we've done within the profitability capability within the EPM Cloud. And it's designed to really be simple, for simple and easy steps. So when you think about in terms of an allocation, it typically, falls into some sort of category, right? And you have the ability to basically break them up into chunks, for example, shared service allocations. And specifically, you can create what we call a rule set, which would be your shared services allocation, and then from there have multiple different rules. One, say, maybe some for human resources in this example, or whatever, IT, or even break it down further, right? Kind of the second step here when defining an allocation rule in the system really gets down to basically saying, what am I going to allocate, right? What is the source that I'm going to select here that's going to then be allocated out, right? So in this case here, I've got human resources. I want to select corporate human resources. And then the next is, where's that going to go, right? I've got those costs that need to be allocated, and I need to have a destination, right? Easily selecting the destination. And third is basically defining how am I going to move those dollars from my source to my destination. I'm going to use some sort of driver, in this case here, FTEs, for example. Again, really designed to be very simple, business user-driven allocation process. And at the heart of the model, right, when you look at a costing model, you define it based on what we call its dimensionalities or dimensionality. And think about a dimension as kind of the buys of the business, right? How do I want to look at things, for example? Do I want to look at things by quality activities? Do I want to look at things by departments, accounts, plans, segments, markets, entities, right? What is that different breakdown that I want to have within the cost model? And again, it typically gets down to thinking about, one, what's the level of detail of costs I'm going to allocate? And that's typically at that natural account, cost center, entity, business unit level, right? And then where's that going to go? What level, what are the different granular areas that I want to allocate that to, right? My segments, my markets, my plans, right? Those quality activities, right? And because this is based on a multi-dimensional model, it makes it very simple to understand, to administer, and also facilitates analytics, right? To be able to do the slicing and dicing to see costs by markets, by segments, by plans, and to be able to do that robust analysis that you need to understand costing or operating margin, or where costs may be out of line within the organization. I talked a lot as well around transparency. So what's important around this capability is the ability to track every step within the allocation process. Where are the dollars coming in from, and where are they going out, right? And that gets down to transparency as well as auditability. Again, if you're looking at things like quality cost allocations, you want to be able to make sure that you're accounting for every dollar, that it's traceable, that it's can be defended to an auditor, for example, to be able to say, hey, here's kind of the origin and breakup of these quality costs, and all the way back down to a time study, for example, that could be used to drive out those types of costs. And then from there, again, with the idea of this transparency, you can be taken from virtually any spot within, say, the model. Again, this is an example of, now I'm looking at my rule balancing, and I want to be able to drill into, say, one of these dollars and be able to quickly understand and decompose where those costs are coming from. And actually, I'm going to be showing you this as well. As I go into the actual solution, you will be able to see this capability and understand exactly what that looks like. Also around auditability is the out-of-the-box program documentation. So being able to say, hey, let's look at the full scope of the cost model. What are all the different rules? What are all the rule sets? And what exactly are they doing? And being able to develop that that documentation automatically with the system capabilities using out-of-the-box functionality. So next, I want to talk a little bit about a typical cost model for a health plan. Once I go through this, I'll kind of transition into the actual live software and take you through what that looks like, and in terms of being able to allocate these costs within the EPM platform. And again, so I apologize, I didn't mention, but you do have the capability to ask questions. There is a question and answer box where you can go ahead and submit questions. I can try to answer them as I go, or at the end of the session as well. So in terms of a typical cost model here for a payer, We typically see source data around obviously the general ledger, right? Core admin, claims, premium information as well, your membership. Those different costs to be able to not only bring in the dollars that I need to allocate, but also the drivers that are going to be pushing that down to the detail level, right? And then, within that, you have the capability to load those into the allocation database, and that database is defined by those dimensions I talked about, right? Those buys of the business, things like your clients, your segments, your plans, your markets, your line of businesses, etc. So once you bring in that source data, right, the general ledger, the data you're going to allocate, the drivers associated with that, you're able to run the costing process. And this is a typical step-down allocation process, and kind of what the model that I'm going to show you is designed after. It's really designed to first go through what we call data collection and mapping, right? So being able to, again, maybe collect driver data. Maybe I'm collecting things like time studies for quality cost allocations or for functional areas, things like that, right? And once I've collected all that information, I can go through and use that to do things like shared service allocations. So being able to allocate, those different services that corporate supports throughout the organization. And then from there we typically see, what we call kind of an activity-based step, where we use different activity drivers to look at the different areas of the business and see what activities that those people do, or is it things like calls or customer support hours or things like that that we want to use to drive things down into a more detailed level, the client, the market, the plan, the line of business, etc. And then finally, getting down to that quality cost allocation piece as well, so that you're able to facilitate MLR reporting. And with that, I want to go ahead and transition into the solution here. Again, feel free to ask questions if you choose to do so. All right. So I've gone ahead. I've logged in to the Oracle EPM Cloud. One thing to note, if you're not familiar with it, maybe you're new to the Oracle Cloud, or maybe you're a prior Hyperion customer. You can see that the user interface is much different than Hyperion used to be, for example. It is really built to be a simplified, modern user interface. One of the key aspects that was built into the Oracle EPM Cloud was the ability to configure the navigation of the system based on your role in the organization and the business process you're performing. So, for example, here, if I'm logged in and I have access to the underwriting budget, I have the ability to come in and now be taken through a series of dashboards, templates, reports, all embedded within an intuitive navigation flow that's unique to, again, my role in the organization, as well as the business process, right? And that's really important for users that maybe not using the system that frequently, and to really make it so that that user experience is pretty easy for most people. And again, within here, you have the ability to drill down into different dashboards, right? Defining different types of KPIs, for example, as well, to be able to have that quick view of, hey, where am I from a membership standpoint? What's my MLR looking like very quickly? Am I within that threshold of 85%, for example, to have those types of analytics directly at your fingertips. So what I want to do here is actually take you into the costing process, to be able to give you a sense of what it looks like, how the costing tool works, and how you're able to report as well. So I'm going to kind of switch over to our costing business process and start out with a little bit of reporting. I think reporting is a great place to start whenever you're looking at system capability or talking about things, because it really gives you that, that end in mind type of a scenario where you can see what the output is, and then really peel it back to understand what, how did I derive that? And I'm going to start out with basically a profit and loss statement. So I've gone through and I've run my allocation process, my multi-tier allocation process. I'll take you through what that looks like in a moment. But really what I've tried to do is get to the point where I can understand my operating margin at a pretty detailed level, to be able to understand, where am I profitable from a market standpoint, a segment, a line of business very quickly, and have easy reporting within this. So this is a quick profit and loss statement here, broken down for the organization by medical plans, dental plans, vision plans, etc. And from here, I have the ability within these reports to basically have a analysis path based on what I want to investigate. For example, here, let's take a look at our administrative activities. From there, I can drill in and look at things by segment, by product, as well as MLR reporting. So if I come in here to my product view, now I'm taken to a more detailed P&L based on my products within the organization, as well as the different segments and markets. And again, from here, I can select any one of these. For example, if I wanted to get into the basic HMO and understand that by market, I can very simply come through and through a few clicks, kind of drill down to that level of detail to understand what that margin looks like. So that's kind of an example of what I'll call more formatted reports. I showed you some dashboards. One of the capabilities that is very powerful is the ability to report directly within Excel through the EPM cloud. And this gives you that very robust slicing and dicing capability to be able to say, hey, let's look and understand and get into these costs. Let's dig deep and start to pivot and get our hands dirty, right? So within here, I have a simple Smart View query in Excel, and from here I can start to drill in and understand things in a little bit more detail. One thing to note here, this is a live connection. If you're not familiar with Smart View is Oracle's standard Microsoft Office interface that allows direct connections to the Oracle Cloud. So right here I have, basically I can come in here, I can refresh my data, and I have that direct link back, in this case here, to my costing database. So from here I can start to do ad hoc analysis. For example, let's just focus in on operating margin. So I'll say keep only on operating margin. And then from there, I can start to drill down and understand different aspects. For example, here, let's look at this by segment, right? So all I have to do is double click, and it's going to give me a nice breakdown of my operating margin by segment. And let's go ahead and pivot this actually. And then from there, again, I can continue to say I wanted to look at large group, right? I can come in here, focus only on large group, and maybe now I want to be able to do analysis by market. Again, simple drill down analysis to be able to look at things now by market, by plan type, for example, here, and to be able to pivot and easily develop a report or do analysis to give me insight into profitability. Again, if you're not familiar with the Smart View capability, it's pervasive throughout the Oracle Cloud Platform. Gives you that nice slicing and dicing capability, as well as that real-time reporting. And with this, I can save this as a regular Excel spreadsheet. I can email it to somebody, they can connect to it, and have that capability of being able to continue to slice and dice, if you will. So with that, let's kind of move back into the web interface here. Again, I showed you some examples of some reporting capabilities. One thing I wanted to really get into is kind of some of the built-in intelligence within the solution. And this kind of facilitates things like what we call traceability. So being able to uncover and understand, where costs are coming and going within the solution, right? It's not, for this type of tool set, you really don't want to have a black box. You don't want to have something that you're not going to be able to understand or defend when it comes to costing. So this tracing capability facilitates that sort of transparency and reporting. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take a look at, basically some costs that were allocated here to the basic HMO. And what I want to be able to do is I want to trace this back to be able to understand where the costs are coming from. So as I run this, I'm going to get basically a graphical report or analytics that allow me to now drill through the actual costing process. So in this particular case here, I have $2.6 million here that have been allocated to this particular segment plan of the business. And I want to understand where that came from, right? And to be able to do that, all I have to do is simply drill up or drill over to unwind the actual allocation process. And what it will do is basically show me a breakdown of where that $2.6 million are coming from. I can see precisely where each piece is coming from, the percentage, the driver that was used, the percentage of that basically makes that up. And then from there, I can continue actually to drill further back through the different steps within the allocation process. So think about this in terms of, again, somebody's trying to understand, hey, why am I getting these allocations? I don't understand. This is the type of capability that allows you to have a conversation with a business partner to say, hey, this is really what's driving this allocation. It makes sense. Here's the drivers, here's the percentages, and here's the dollars and the associated breakdown. And it really helps to drive those conversations away from defending costs to now being able to say, let's actually do analysis and understand what things look like from the standpoint of operating margin across our different segments of the business, for example. That was one example of what we call a trace back, where we kind of looked back through the allocation process. We also have the capability to go the opposite direction. So if we have, say, a department, say our occupancy department, for example, here, and we want to be able to see where those costs are going. And this may be more of an activity around when you're developing your cost model to maybe just validate it to see that, hey, let's, we built these rules and rule sets out. We want to now see, the actual costing in action, if you will, to be able to report on it, to understand where those costs are going to. In this case here, for my occupancy department, I had $43 million that were input that represents what was loaded from the general ledger. I also have an allocation in of $507,000. So what that represents is the fact that I'm getting more dollars in from other areas, from other departments. And then ultimately, the entire amount was allocated out throughout the costing process, right? Because it's, again, we're looking at this from a trace forward standpoint, so we want to be able to see where are those costs going. And then as I drill through, I can see, hey, those occupancy costs are being allocated out through different rules. One's called corporate shared services, the other is rent and utilities assignment. And again, I can see what the driver is and what the actual percentage is as well. And then from there, again, I can continue to drill through visually through the different areas to understand exactly where those costs are going. Again, this is useful to be able to more so validate your costing model, to be able to say, here's how we're looking to allocate out a different part of the business. Here's the methodology, and let's just make sure and validate it's going to the places that it's supposed to. So that really, through reporting, through the traceability, again, really starts to solidify capabilities and understandings around transparency and auditability. Before I actually get into showing you what the cost model looks like, I wanted to show you an out-of-the-box report here that we used basically to ensure that everything in the model is in balance. All the costs that we think about are being allocated in or out. So this out-of-the-box report is called our rule balancing report. And what it will do is it start with basically, what are the GL dollars that have been loaded to the system. And then from there, you're able to see a breakdown of essentially the costing process, the different rules in rule sets, and where those dollars are coming in and coming out. In this example here, we can see the first step was that occupancy that I looked at previously. Then it gets into shared services. This cost model actually is designed for a health system that has not only a health plan, but actually care delivery as well. We do have a lot of integrated delivery networks that we work with, and we do facilitate that capability of, again, not just looking at the insurance piece, but also care delivery and having the ability to allocate both of those out. So that's why you see kind of the acute pieces in here that's really focused on care delivery. And then as I move down, you see a step where now associated with the health plan, where after I do the shared services, I allocate things into different cost pools, and then from cost pools down to the different market segments and plans, if you will, and then also assigning things like medical costs for your MLR reporting. And again, part of that transparency gets into the interaction directly within the tool. So, for example, here, if I want to see, if I want to understand this human resources allocation in a little bit more detail, all I have to do is come and look at, say, I want to see the $61 million that were allocated in and out within that rule. Simply by clicking that, it's going to take me now into Excel and fire up basically a smart view query of that exact dollar amount. So you can see here, here is that $61 million, and now that I'm within Smart View, right, I can start to come through and do different types of analysis, right? I can come in here and again do the different types of drill downs, look at things, say, by department. So if I come in here, let's bring in department. So I want to be able to see where the HR department is being allocated to by department. I can bring in that dimension and simply double click to drill down. And keep in mind here, I'm looking at the allocation in, right? So I can also see all aspects of not just what is coming in, but what is coming out, to, again, kind of getting into that balancing view. So if I come in here and I select, instead of just allocation in, I'll also get allocation out and the net change, right? Because ideally, I want to see that net out to zero, right? Because I want to make sure that all those costs are being allocated out. So here, I can now see very quickly that if I drill in where that HR allocation is going, right? So I've got the allocation out where, again, I'm allocating out those costs from HR, and the allocation in showing me all the different departments and areas that I'm allocating those costs to. Again, really being able to, at your fingertips, audit any one of these costs and really quickly understand, how they're working and the accuracy of them as well. So again, let's transition back here into the web interface. Again, I'll pause if if there's any questions. Again, feel free to ask those in the Q&A or as I go, or again wait till the end. One of the next things now I want to take you through is the actual makeup of the cost model. So this kind of gives you, hey, this is what, here are the different rule sets and rules and the dollars that are coming and going. Now I want to actually show you the cost model itself. So let's go to the administration of an actual rule. And I talked about this before, kind of that point and click interface, right? Again, I talked about terms of rule sets, right? So if I look at this costing model, I have 12 different rule sets, if you will. A rule set is nothing more than a group of logically similar allocation rules. So in this case, again, it takes you through that waterfall of occupancy, corporate shared services. There's those care delivery segments, cost pools, all the way down to quality cost allocations. So let's go ahead and take a look at one of these rules and kind of how easy it is to create one. So I'm going to focus here on corporate shared services. So again, corporate shared services is a rule set. That means it's a grouping of rules. For example, things like my HR, my recruitment, IT administration, etc. When I define this rule set, I can also dictate how precisely I want it to run. For example, I may choose to do it, serial. That means one step at a time, or parallel, meaning that I don't have codependencies. I don't have step down. I can just run a lot of things at one time. Let's leverage the power and scalability of the Oracle Cloud Platform to be able to get to this level of detail very quickly. Or iterative. In the case of shared service allocation like that, we do have kind of some reciprocal relationships. So it's important to be able to iterate, to be able to say, hey, HR supports IT, IT supports HR. Let's kind of work that out to make sure that everything is fully burdened within that process. So let's look at an actual rule. The rules again are broken up very simply. I kind of talked about this earlier in my presentation, where you have three components, right? You have the source, which represents what I'm going to allocate, the destination, where's that going, and then the driver basis, how am I going to do that, right? And then for each of these, I basically come through here and select which areas of that I want to allocate out, right? So from a source standpoint, I simply go through my different dimensions, right? Again, I have my GL data that was loaded by account, department, and entity. And then I can parse out specific sections so that I can allocate them out differently. For example, here, I've selected human resources. And also note that I can either select individual departments, or I can select parents of departments. Best practice is to select a parent. That means that allows, as new departments are added, it'll automatically be allocated using that same methodology. You can also do things like user-defined attributes as well to be able to select different types of departments or different segments. So now, once I've gone through, I've basically defined, hey, I want to allocate out my human resources. I want to do all my operating expenses, and everything within a general administration. I want to say, where is that going to go, right? So basically, what areas are getting served by human resources? In this case here, I can see that I've selected a set of departments or department parents, if you will, where those different costs are going to go, so that, again, everything, all the different areas that are supported by HR. Notice up top here for account, I'm saying same as source. All that means is when I go from my source to my destination, I'm keeping everything, I'm keeping that level of detail the same. I'm maintaining my natural account level of detail within this allocation step. And then finally, the last piece is how am I going to do it? What driver, in this case here, FTEs, and from there, I can go ahead and continue to create more rules to define things in more detail. Say, for example, here, I wanted to create another rule. I can either just create one from scratch. The easiest one to do is just to copy a rule, right? And I can come in here and I can just call this my new HR rule. I can actually copy this multiple times. So maybe I'm going to parse things out 8 different ways. I can make 8 different copies. And then from there, all I have to do is go ahead and make the changes where necessary. So for example, here, maybe I'm parsing out the individual HR departments in a little bit more detail because I want to leverage a different allocation methodology, right? So for payroll, for example, I wanted to use something else that's more relevant for that department. I can easily select that. Destination will be the same, and then basically now I can come in here and I can select a different driver that's more appropriate for payroll. Starting to wind down on time here. I think I've got another, looks like 7 minutes or so. I'll basically hit a few other areas of the cost model, and then I'll pause again to see if there are any questions. Again, really, this walks you through the different types of rules. One thing to note, as I define a cost model, we have this notion of what's called the point of view. So if you see up top here, I've selected actual, I've selected a certain year, as well as a certain period. This point of view allows you to define what slice of data you're going to allocate. Am I going to allocate just 1 month, 1 year, right? Or maybe even one different segment of the business, right? You can have multiple different costing methodologies for different segments of the business, and those are dictated through those points of view. Also, within those points of view, I have the ability to take and look at one of these different data slices. For example, here, these point of views are set up as a scenario, a year, and a period. I can make a copy of any one of these. For example, here, if I wanted to look at December in a different way, I can actually copy that point of view and copy that to a different scenario. For example, a what-if scenario, to be able to say, hey, I want to change something. I want to be able to model things differently. Maybe I want to model or cost my actual budget as well, not just actuals, but my budget as well. I may be able to, I can make a copy of my model, change whatever rules I need to for that, and that's all controlled through this point of view. Finally, when I've gone through, I've set up my point of view to define what I'm going to allocate. I've got my rule sets and my rules. The next logical thing is to actually run my allocation. So when you're actually running the costing allocation, you have quite a bit of flexibility, right? You can run all your different rules, or you can specify a range. So maybe say as you go through a close process or different data becomes available, you're able to run different segments of the allocation independently. Maybe you had data changed at one point, so you only have to go and run that for one point as well. You have that flexibility. One thing to also note here is when you're running that allocation, this clear calculated data checkbox. It seems very innocent, but it's actually very powerful. So when you think about things like allocation rollbacks in terms of, say, trying to do that in the general ledger, it's very difficult, right? So this kind of gets again into performance ledger versus general ledger. Here I have the capability to run the allocation or easily roll it back to any step. And again, I'm not creating any sort of journals or things like that directly into the general ledger, so I can do those types of rollbacks quickly and easily, right? So if data has changed, if something was incorrect, all I have to do is run the clear. It'll basically unwind those allocations to that step, and then I can go through and rerun them as many times as necessary. So that rollback capability is definitely very powerful when it comes to being able to make changes and having that flexibility within the system. So now, basically, again, I've obviously have gone through. I've already ran this allocation, so I won't do that for you today. But what I've done is kind of taken you through kind of the gamut of looking at costing reports and dashboards and analytics to be able to see what it looks like, what our profitability and margin looks like for the different segments of the business, right? How you can trace and understand where costs are coming from in clear, concise, easy to explain ways. Tools to make sure that everything is balanced, everything is auditable, right? As well as an easy to use, point and click rule engine to be able to define that cost model and be able to define how those costs are kind of coming and going within the system. And then ultimately, once you've done that, you have the ability then to execute the actual allocation. With that, that's really all I had to cover. Again, I'll pause here. There's a couple minutes. If there's any questions, please go ahead and submit those. I can try to answer them now, or if you feel like answering questions later on, we can definitely get back to you as well.